into the time of the message, I have a little confession to make. I don't know if the Holy Spirit's been working in my life or if Pastor Doug has had too much of an influence on me because, well, just as Lynn said, last week's message and the journey we've been on through the end of the Gospel of Mark kind of left me a little inspired. And for those of you that know me pretty well, you'll be really surprised to learn that I had all of my notes written Friday last week, okay? So like 10 days ago, and got really far ahead and really inspired. And then on top of that, this last week, I was visiting with Pastor Doug, and he was sharing with me the framework for the direction we're headed this fall and his kind of topics that he's selected and different scripture lesson readings and things. And I thought, man, Pastor Doug, did you look at my message notes? Because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. You can't talk about it because then you're just going to show me up on your message or something. I don't know. We had a little fun moment, but what I realized was what I believe the Spirit is saying is today is kind of one of those times where we get to open up and reflect and look for what God is going to do in us and through us. And today isn't the first step, but it is maybe the perspective we need in order to take this journey this fall. And I'm excited for it. You're going to learn more about it later. The message series is called Bury the Dead, and not in the gruesome, weird Halloween theme because we're coming up on October, but what are the things that are holding us back and how do we let go of them is kind of where we're going. And anyway, I guess I'll begin with my notes here that kind of relate to this, I believe. I want to start off and just say a quick thank you. Trish and I, we moved into our house what seems like 6 minutes ago, but also 6 years ago. It's funny how time passes. We got a new house. We were homeowners before, but we're homeowners again now and looking for a little bit bigger of a place. And a lot of you know that, but I just didn't want to miss an opportunity to say thank you for the love and support and the over dozen people who helped us move and just the gracious friendships that we've had. It plays into something that's really important for Trish and I, and that's the dream we have for our lives and the dream we have for raising our children. We believe in putting in deep roots, and so this house is kind of an all-in expression of that, how much we love First Church and how much we are looking forward to continuing to raise our family with you in this community and North Platte. So, but I have a confession with it. It's a new house, and for those of you who are homeowners, you know how it goes. I was, even just this week, ready to pull my hair out. Yes, these beautiful golden locks I have pulled back today. We were ready to pull them out, okay? No comments about cutting it off, please. It gets frustrating being a homeowner sometimes, doesn't it? You know, you can encounter problems that you saw, that you didn't see. You know, we have a little more square footage, so it was like, oh, well, we painted the last one. We laid down the floor in the last one, which for those of you that know me as a musician, that's saying a lot, okay? There are no calluses on these hands except for where I play guitar, okay? So the fact that we were able to do all of this was like, okay, we can do this. And then we get in and we start unveiling some of the problems in the house, and it's like, oh, what did we do? You know, but then we pick ourselves back up and we keep doing, and we'll probably go through this pattern a little bit. And I was thinking, you know, sometimes in those moments, this is what spurred me to want to share with you today. Sometimes in life, just like when we were encountering problems at our house, we get discouraged. And the dream we have for our house, for us, it's that we'll be the hangout house for our kids, you know, that their friends will want to come over to our house. Some of you get that. I don't know. We already have a lot of kids. It's already a zoo, so I don't know how that's going to work. But that's part of the dream for our house. And then when we encounter the problems, it seems like the dream can't be further away from reality. That's tough. And I know for you, just as Lynn was sharing, sometimes it seems like the dream we have for our lives or for our nation can't be further away than possible. We even sometimes can get to the point to ask ourselves, why even dream? Why even bother to show up? Why even tear out the carpet? I have a thing about carpet right now just because of the house, you know, just a lot of the work there. But the obvious solution, and Lynn sang it so well, he said it so well, because Jesus lives, we can face tomorrow. We have a faith that helps us endure, right? That's what it's about. That's what the message today is about having an unveiling faith. I like the way Paul would write it in Romans 5, verses 1 and 2. And this is the New Living Translation, just to echo Brian. Sometimes the translations we read get a little wordy or a little turned around. So find an easy-to-read version for yourself. It may add some clarity. And so for this one, too, the New Living Translation of Romans 5, verses 1 and 2. Therefore, since we have been made right in God's sight by faith. It's all about faith. It's nothing else that we have to do. We have peace with God because of what Jesus Christ, our Lord, has done for us. And that's not all, folks. He keeps going. He says, because of our faith, Christ has brought us into this place of undeserved privilege, not just peace to endure the storm, but undeserved privilege. How sweet it is to hold a newborn baby. That's what that reminds me of. Where we now stand and we confidently and joyfully look forward to sharing God's glory. We use our faith, friends, to endure times of stress, to endure times of trouble. When we're grieving, we say, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. This is an expression of faith. Our attendance today is an expression of faith. And we need our faith because sometimes we feel the darkness creeping in, don't we? There's a dream I used to have. I remember from being a younger child, even into my teenage years, it was a weird recurring thing. I don't know anything about it other than it happened. And the dream I would be dreaming, it wouldn't matter. At some point, it was as if all the light went dim into pure darkness. And I'd start running because, well, it's darkness, and I'm little, and I'm a kid, and I'm afraid of the dark. And so I'd start running, always running. And then there would be this cannon fodder in the distance. I've never been in a war. My dad is not a veteran, but it was still there. I don't know where that comes from, but it added to the fear. It added to the anxiety. And it turned this dream into a nightmare. So I would keep running. And maybe I was watching too many sci-fi movies as a kid because then the tentacles or android legs would descend from the sky. And then maybe it was that moment of clarity that I'd wake up because I don't remember anything after that in the dream. And I'd wake up and I'd have to say to myself, it was only, say it with me, a dream. It was only a dream. I had to have the faith and assurance to wake myself up and go, okay, And talking about it now, it's like, okay, well, we've all had a nightmare, whether it's our teeth falling out or standing in front of the crowd naked. Like, I don't get that one, but we've all had a nightmare of some kind, right? And we wake up and it's like, it was only a dream. We have to assure ourselves. And you know what I mean? Because it's not just the laughable talk about the dream. When we seriously wake up, we are still feeling all of that anxiety, and we have to have faith in that moment as we transition from dream world to reality. Interestingly enough, I think we also have to have faith when transitioning from waking world to dreaming, to going to sleep. That's a different message, though. Paul echoes this in Hebrews 11, verse 1. Faith is the assurance. And you know what I mean. It's in the hospital room when we're listening to the doctor. We need faith so we're not so stressed out we can hear their instructions. It's the faith that helps us when we're at a loved one's memorial to be strong for our family members. It's the faith that when you're under pressure from family and work, that you endure instead of caving in. Faith is so important. But the faith Lynn sang about, I don't know why I keep coming back to this. It's so inspired. But the faith that Paul was writing about and the faith that Enoch had, that Abel had, that Noah had, was not just a faith that helped them endure the storm. No, the faith that Noah had was to build the ark anyway. That Enoch had to have the conversations with God anyway. That Abel had to continue to give the God-honoring sacrifice even though it clearly upset his brother. It's an actionable faith. That's why Paul didn't just stop there, that faith is assurance. The rest of the verse says this. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith is why we go to work. Faith is why we wake up in the morning and get out of bed. Faith is why we take each step toward living into the dream that God has for our lives. So on this Labor Day weekend, I want us I want to invite you to remember that when it comes to faith, your work, your life, and every action you make is important. Because, and this is very important, and it's echoed in this Hebrew text as well. I encourage you to go back to read it. But every action we take is important because it will either move you in the direction Christ has for your life, or it will leave you at best in the monotonous daydream that slowly fades into the quiet, and at worst, the nightmare you dread. That's why faith is so important. It's not just a static state of being. It's moving in one direction or the other, ever flowing. And so, my friends, it's time to wake up. It's time to look behind the veil and recognize the real practical power of Christ in our life. There's a movie scene that this expression reminds me of, where the protagonist, she's endured meeting these scary characters. She's endured flying monkeys. She's conquered the witch. She's followed the yellow brick road. Now, quick aside here. Y'all should be proud of me that this Kansas boy, after 7 years, has finally given you your first Wizard of Oz reference, okay? All right, I've been holding on to this one. But Judy Garland, she enters as an actress into this stadium, into this arena, green and emerald, and she encounters the great Oz, right? And the scene, actually, I have a picture of it from Liberal, Kansas. This is part of I believe, at least a recreation, if not part of the original set. And for those of us who are adults, you actually walk in eye level. They do this weird camera shot to make it look big and grand, but it's not that intimidating. So Judy Garland's a fantastic actress, and she inspires us. She tells us, and this is the illustration, this is the point, that when you arrive and you're being told no, that might not be the whole situation. What does she do? We all remember when Oz says, "No, I'm not going to grant you your wish," or, I don't remember the exact line. Need to watch the movie again, but she looks behind the curtain, doesn't she? She sees that this big, great, grand, glorious Oz is not who he's made to be. And she ends up helping Oz and helping herself. Both achieve the dream that they have for their life. Solomon writes in Proverbs verse 4, 18 and 19, this is exactly what our faith should do, just what happened to Dorothy. The path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. Dorothy's faith shined brighter and brighter and illuminated not just her own circumstance, but the wizards, the lions, the Tin Mans, and Oz himself. It kept shining. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what they stumble over. My friends, if your faith is not revealing or illuminating or moving in the direction God is calling you to, then, as Solomon is putting it, you're not righteous. You're stumbling in the darkness, and unfortunately, you are wicked. Do you like what I did there? Wicked, the musical, Oz. Anybody catch that reference? Okay. Sorry. I worked hard on that. We're either wicked or righteous, and moving in one direction or the other. It's never a static thing. There's another example, a much more down-to-earth example and real example that I really admire in a pastor that's down in Kansas, actually. And I lift him up because of his situation and the expression of faith, not because he's a pastor, because each of us can express this same type of faith. I happen to know about this pastor because I went to college with his brother. His brother was a great trumpet player, played some jazz with him. It was really cool. And then I found out his brother was in seminary at the time. I was in college, and I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. So I followed him a little bit. And a few years ago, he was finally appointed as an ordained Methodist minister to his first church. And not just a parish between 2 or 3 smaller towns, but an actual full-sized parish. And this was quite a big deal because usually only pastors who have been around for 10, 15 years get this type of an appointment. So it was the dream job, I should say. And he was doing it right. He had checked all the boxes, and while checking the boxes, he was raising a beautiful family and was really connecting. So I was really, really surprised and honestly concerned when I heard that just after 6 months of being appointed, that January he would be taking a leave of absence. He said, I'm leaving. And that's a big deal, folks. I found out that his son had been diagnosed with autism. And I don't want to get into that too much, but like any disease, oftentimes you have to catch it early in order to prevent it. You have to catch it early to subside some of the most major symptoms. And this is one that we know that happens to be a little true about. And, I admire his faith because he could have said, no, we're not going to test him. These overly organized blocks and his ability to count really high, we'll just write that off as a quirky type A personality, His inability to sit still, we'll just say, oh, he just needs to run and play. Boys need to be boys. He could have just written that off. He could have said his delayed language development, well, he's just smart. He knows how to talk without words. The things parents say sometimes. He could have said any of these things, and he would have just maintained and gone along. But instead, he had the faith to have him tested. And when he found the diagnosis, he had the faith to give up the perfect life, at least for a moment, and help his son, to battle away the darkness. He looked under the veil and found that things weren't quite right. So he allowed his faith to heal the solution. And I don't know the whole situation, but I do know he's been reappointed to a new church. He's back preaching, he's back doing his thing, and his son is a much higher functioning student than they ever thought possible. He's exceeding all expectations for his diagnosis. And I don't want you to miss this, whether it's the pastor with his child, Dorothy and Oz, Trish and I, and our, maybe dumbfounded way of trying to get into a new house, that, our faith can carry us through, but it's the unveiling faith that makes the biggest difference. The pastor could have kept preaching. Dorothy could have kept searching. Trish and I could have, just barely maintained the house. It's a city ordinance to mow the lawn. You got to do that every once in a while. Work is going to happen. Work has got to happen, and we'll end up being forced into it one way or the other. So are you going to let it happen, or are you going to take the initiative to unveil what God has for your life? That's the question. And what happens when we rip down the veil? Will we encounter a dragon? Will we encounter a problem that we don't know how to deal with? Well, I think we should look to Jesus and the veil he ripped down. You see, for Jesus, as we go back to the cross and even before then, there was a veil, and he would have known well about this. Look through the book of Leviticus, you'll see the extreme detail and care that there was given to building the temple and the specific veil that withheld the presence of God. It was known as the Holy of Holies. I wouldn't be able to go in there today. Yes, I'm a guy, okay, so that gets me 3 or 4 steps in further than most of you women, but I'm not Jewish. Let alone I'm not a Levite. So not just being of the right birth order, but being of the right birth order within the right birth order. And then on top of that, as we look to the rest of the text, it's pretty gruesome, but there's entrails that we have to walk through. There's all sorts of cleaning, crazy, wild stuff that we'd have to go through just in order to maybe enter the Holy of Holies. That's how you encountered God before Christ. That's what we face, my friends, if we don't have faith. That's our only hope. But when Jesus died, the curtain of the temple was torn into from top to bottom. It just brings a smile to my face, because instead of Jesus encountering another demon or battling Satan or anything like that, no, when he ripped the veil open through his death on the cross, he unveiled God's presence to the world. That same presence you and I get to experience today. Our faith is the exact same. I guess the point I'm trying to make today is, after the long weekend, when you go back to work, when you call that friend or that relative, Are you just going to let things continue to gloss over and fade into the darkness? Or are you going to have the faith to unveil the whole situation? The faith that brings the light of God, that, as Solomon put it, grows brighter and brighter like the noonday sun. It won't be without sacrifice, and it's not always going to be pretty. In fact, it might not be at all what you imagined it to be. But imagine the hope, the peace, the joy, the happiness, the love, all of the fruits of the Spirit that you will bring not only to your own life, but to the world, if only you have unveiling faith. Will you pray with me? Jesus, this morning, I feel you calling us. I feel you saying to each and every one of us, in each and every one of our situations, that something's not right, that something needs fixed, something needs repaired, that may be obvious for many of us, that may be too much for us because we don't know how to heal a nation. It may be a little too disturbing for some of us in our picture-perfect life right now. But Jesus, you're still calling us. You're drawing us forward. You're moving us into your presence, and you're saying, shine my light. And so, Jesus, I thank you for the warmth of that light. I thank you for the hope, the joy, and the ability to live in the future because of the light you have shined. Jesus, each and every one of us are here today, whether we're watching online later or present now in the room, because we have tasted and we have seen the light and love of your goodness, the forgiveness that allows us to move forward, to not have to worry about all of those ancient laws, but to take up our faith, to take up our mantle and shine your light into our own world in a tangible and practical way. Jesus, I thank you. Because you did the exact same, and it is your example that we hope to follow today. If I'm honest, Jesus, I don't know what that's going to look like in the coming moments. I don't know what that's going to look like this week, but you don't really expect us to know, do you? All you ask is that we remember you as we move forward, as we act, as we step out in faith. That's what you were telling us years ago when you sat down with the disciples in the upper room. You talked about how God had redeemed the world. You served your disciples, and then you lifted up a piece of bread, a loaf of bread. And you said, "This is my body, which is broken for you to make you whole." And then you poured out a cup and lifted it up and blessed it and said, "This is my blood of the new covenant that is poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins." It's incredible, Jesus, that your sacrifice made this all possible. It's incredible that we are able to join with your Spirit now, that exact same Spirit that you talked about in antiquity. It's proof that you are a living God. It's proof that your life in us makes a difference. And so I pray today that we would be of that mind, that we would be of that faith, one that not just carries us through, but inspires the world to love like you and draws your kingdom nearer. We love you, we praise you, and we thank you. It is all in your holy and precious name, Jesus. Amen.